They thought she was just a harmless woman in a grocery store. They tossed her in front of her husband, an old veteran who said nothing at first. But 40 minutes later, the FBI walked through the station doors and everything stopped. This isn't just a story about a misunderstanding. It's about a man who once served in silence, and how that silence triggered a federal alert no one in town expected. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. And subscribe if you believe that service never truly ends. In the small town of Millfield, life moved slowly. It was a place where everyone knew each other. Neighbors greeted one another with friendly waves, and life felt simple and predictable. The streets were lined with houses that had stood for generations. People here valued routine and community. John Barrett was a man everyone respected. He was in his late 60s and had served in the military for many years. Though he never talked much about his past, people knew he had been a decorated soldier. John had a calm presence, and he was always willing to help anyone in need. He spent his days doing small tasks around town and tending to his garden. Mary, John's wife, was loved by many in Millfield. She volunteered at the local food bank and was known for her kindness. She had a warm smile and a gentle way with people. Those who met her felt at ease. Mary and John had been married for over 40 years, and they were a familiar sight in town, always together. One evening, Mary went to the grocery store to pick up a few items for dinner. The store was small, with narrow aisles and shelves full of goods. As she moved from aisle to aisle, she greeted the familiar faces of the staff and other shoppers. Everyone knew Mary, and Mary knew everyone. A new security guard had started working at the store. His name was Tom. He had moved to Millfield recently and was still learning about the people and the place. Tom was eager to do his job well. He watched the security monitors closely, trying to be vigilant. As Mary walked through the store, she picked up a few items, placing them in her basket. She stopped to chat with an old friend about the upcoming town fair. They laughed and shared stories, enjoying the moment. Mary then continued her shopping, not in a rush. Tom, watching from the security room, noticed Mary on the monitors. He saw her pick up some items and put them in her basket. But when she stopped to chat, he thought she had slipped something into her bag. Tom felt a sense of duty to act. He left the security room and approached Mary. Tom was firm as he told Mary he needed to check her bag. Mary was surprised and confused. She assured him she had nothing to hide and opened her bag willingly. But Tom was not convinced. He thought she was trying to fool him. The misunderstanding grew quickly. Tom insisted on checking the contents of her bag again. Mary tried to explain that there was nothing there that did not belong. Shoppers nearby began to notice the situation. Some stopped to watch, curious about the unfolding scene. Mary's voice was calm, but she was clearly upset. John, who was waiting outside in their car, noticed the commotion through the store's windows. He saw his wife surrounded by people and knew something was wrong. He got out of the car and hurried inside, his heart pounding. When John entered the store, he found Mary standing with Tom, who was still accusing her. Mary looked at John, her eyes filled with worry. John approached them and tried to understand what was happening. He listened as Tom explained his version of events. John spoke calmly, trying to defuse the situation. He told Tom that Mary would never steal. But Tom was adamant. He believed he was doing his job. The tension in the store was growing. The other shoppers were whispering among themselves, unsure of what to think. As the argument continued, Tom lost his patience. He reached for his taser, thinking it would control the situation. Before anyone could react, Tom tossed Mary and she fell to the ground. The shock of the moment was felt by everyone in the store. John rushed to Mary's side, his heart aching. Mary lay on the floor, dazed and in pain. The crowd of onlookers grew silent, stunned by what they had just seen. John gently held Mary's hand, trying to comfort her. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. The local police arrived shortly after, responding to the disturbance call. They entered the store and were met with a scene of confusion and distress. John, still kneeling beside Mary, tried to explain what had happened. But the officers were cautious. They did not know John or Mary and wanted to follow procedure. John's attempts to explain were met with skepticism. The officers were unsure of who to believe. They decided to detain both John and Mary until they could sort things out. This decision added to the humiliation the Barretts already felt. As John and Mary were led away by the police, the townspeople in the store began to voice their outrage. Many knew the Barretts well and could not believe what had just happened. They argued with the officers, insisting that a mistake had been made. The officers, however, were firm in their decision. They assured the crowd that they would investigate the matter thoroughly. John and Mary, though upset, complied with the officers' requests. They knew that causing a scene would not help. At the police station, John and Mary were placed in a room to wait. The officers reviewed the security footage from the store, hoping to find clarity. As the minutes passed, John sat quietly beside Mary, holding her hand. He felt a deep sense of injustice but stayed calm. Mary was shaken but tried to stay strong. She leaned on John for comfort, trusting that the truth would come out. The couple sat in silence, reflecting on the events that had brought them there. Back in Millfield, the news of the incident spread quickly. Neighbors and friends gathered, many heading to the police station to show their support. They wanted to ensure that John and Mary were treated fairly. The misunderstanding at the grocery store had turned into something much bigger. Millfield, usually so peaceful, was now filled with tension and uncertainty. People questioned how such a thing could happen to two of their most respected residents. As the night wore on, the officers came to realize the mistake. The footage clearly showed that Mary had done nothing wrong. They apologized to John and Mary, explaining that they needed to complete the paperwork before releasing them. John accepted the apology but remained firm in his demand for justice. He wanted to ensure that Mary's name was cleared and that such a mistake would not happen again. The officers agreed, understanding the gravity of the situation. In the meantime, the townsfolk outside continued to wait. They were determined to support John and Mary no matter how long it took. Their presence was a testament to the couple's standing in the community. As the clock ticked on, John sat with Mary, reflecting on the past. Memories of his military service surfaced unbidden. He recalled the challenges and the secrets he had kept for so long. The current situation reminded him of promises he had made and the importance of standing up for what was right. Eventually, the officers completed their paperwork and returned to the room where John and Mary waited. They informed the couple that they were free to go. John and Mary thanked them, eager to leave the station and return to the comfort of their home. As they walked out, they were met with cheers and applause from the townsfolk gathered outside. Friends and neighbors surrounded them, offering hugs and words of support. John and Mary felt a sense of relief, knowing they were not alone. Returning to their home, John and Mary were grateful for the community's support. They knew that the events of the day would not be forgotten quickly, but they were ready to move forward. Together, they would face whatever came next, strengthened by the love and respect of those around them. In the quiet of their home, John and Mary reflected on the day's events. They knew that life in Millfield would continue, and they were determined to find peace in the simple joys of their everyday routine. John and Mary sat in the small room at the police station, waiting for the officers to finish their review of the situation. The room was plain, with gray walls and a single table. It was not a place they ever expected to find themselves. The couple remained close, speaking little, comforted by each other's presence. The officers, having reviewed the surveillance footage, realized their error. They saw Mary had done nothing wrong. The footage showed her moving through the store, chatting with friends, and placing items in her basket, just as she had said. There was no evidence of shoplifting. One officer approached John and Mary to apologize. He explained that they needed to complete some paperwork following protocol. John nodded, understanding the process but still unsettled by the events. Mary, though quiet, was relieved that the truth had been seen. As they waited, John's mind drifted back to his past. Memories of his military service surfaced. He had been part of a special unit during the Cold War. The missions were secret and the work was dangerous. John had always been proud of his service, though he rarely spoke of it. These memories were stirred by the current situation. Sitting in the police station brought back feelings of tension and uncertainty similar to those he felt during his missions. He remembered the promises he had made to his fellow soldiers, promises that were still important to him. John had been part of an elite group tasked with covert operations. Their work was crucial, yet it came with risks. Many of his friends had not returned from missions. Those who did lived with the weight of what they had seen and done. John carried these memories with him, though he kept them to himself. While John reflected, the officers completed their paperwork. They apologized again for the misunderstanding, assuring the couple that their names would be cleared. John appreciated their acknowledgement but remained firm in his desire for proper justice for Mary. Just as they were about to be released, the unexpected happened. A group of FBI agents arrived at the station. This was not a normal occurrence in Millfield, and it caused a stir. The local officers were puzzled by the federal presence, unsure of what it meant. The lead agent, Sarah Collins, was a composed and confident woman. She requested to speak with John privately, surprising him and the officers. John agreed, curious about what this could mean. He left Mary in the waiting area, promising he would return soon. In a separate room, Agent Collins explained the situation to John. The FBI had been monitoring individuals connected to his old military unit. Recent events had triggered concerns about potential security breaches. John's name had appeared on their radar not as a suspect but as a person of interest. John listened carefully, trying to understand the gravity of what he was being told. Agent Collins assured him that the FBI's interest was purely precautionary. They wanted to ensure that any information related to past operations remained secure. She emphasized that John's past service was highly respected. The mention of security breaches brought John's thoughts back to his missions. He remembered the classified operations, the secrecy, and the trust he shared with his team. The idea that information from those times could be at risk was unsettling. He felt a renewed sense of responsibility to protect the legacy of his service. Agent Collins explained that the FBI's arrival was not a coincidence. When John's name entered the police system, a silent alert was triggered. This alert was part of a broader effort to monitor and protect individuals with sensitive pasts. She assured John that he and Mary were safe and that the visit was to ensure their security. Back in the main area of the station, the local officers were instructed to release John and Mary without charges. The officers, though confused, complied with the federal directive. They watched as Agent Collins and her team took over, feeling a mix of relief and curiosity. Mary was reunited with John, and they were escorted to a waiting vehicle by the FBI agents. The townsfolk who had gathered outside the station watched with a mix of concern and intrigue. They wondered what had truly happened and why the FBI was involved. As they drove away, John and Mary were silent, processing the events of the day. The involvement of the FBI had added a new layer to their ordeal. John thought about the implications of the federal interest in his past. He realized that his service, though decades old, still held importance. The drive to the nearby federal building was brief. Once there, John and Mary were led to a private meeting room. Agent Collins joined them, ready to provide more information. John felt a mix of apprehension and curiosity. He wanted to understand the full scope of the situation. Agent Collins explained that a recent data leak had raised concerns about Cold War operations. Individuals connected to those operations were being monitored to prevent any potential security threats. John's name had been flagged due to his involvement with a special unit. John listened intently, absorbing the details. He remembered the missions, the secrecy, and the trust he shared with his fellow soldiers. The idea that this part of his life was still relevant was surprising. He felt a renewed sense of duty to protect the legacy of his service. Agent Collins expressed regret for the distress caused by their sudden intervention. She assured John and Mary that their safety was a priority. The FBI's interest was in safeguarding information, not in causing alarm. John appreciated her honesty and the clarity she provided. As the meeting concluded, John felt a sense of closure. He understood the importance of his past and the role it played in the present. The experience had been unsettling but enlightening. He was reminded of the value of his service and the impact it had on national security. Returning to Millfield, John and Mary were greeted warmly by their neighbors. The community's support was a source of comfort and strength. The couple resumed their quiet life, grateful for the peace and simplicity of their town. John reflected on the events, recognizing the importance of his choices. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that his past, though never forgotten, was secure. The experience had deepened his appreciation for the present and the life he shared with Mary. As the sun set over Millfield, John and Mary sat together on their porch. The world outside continued to move, but for John, the silence of the night was filled with the echoes of promises kept. He found comfort in knowing that his service and the sacrifices made were valued and protected. John and Mary returned to their home in Millfield, trying to settle back into their routine. The events at the grocery store and the police station had been a whirlwind. Now, with the involvement of the FBI, the reality of John's past had resurfaced in unexpected ways. The couple sought comfort in the familiar surroundings of their home and community. The next day, John received a call from Agent Sarah Collins. She asked if they could meet again to discuss a few more details. Though the previous meeting had provided clarity, John knew there was more to understand. He agreed to meet at a local cafe, a place he and Mary often visited. At the cafe, Agent Collins greeted John warmly. She thanked him for agreeing to another meeting. John appreciated her direct approach, valuing the clarity she provided. They sat at a corner table away from the few other patrons, ensuring privacy. Agent Collins explained that the FBI had been watching certain individuals from John's former unit. These individuals were linked to the same Cold War operations he had been part of. Recent activity suggested a potential threat related to those operations, prompting increased vigilance. John listened carefully. The mention of his old unit brought back memories of friends and missions, some successful, others marked by loss. He thought about the trust and camaraderie they had shared. These missions were secret and the work was critical. The idea that these events were still relevant was both surprising and sobering. Agent Collins continued, explaining that the FBI's interest in him was not as a suspect but as a person of interest. His connection to the unit made him important in their efforts to secure information. She assured John that he was not in any danger and neither was Mary. The conversation turned to the silent alert that had been triggered when John's name entered the police system. This alert was part of a larger system designed to protect individuals with sensitive pasts. It was meant to ensure their safety and the security of classified information. John understood the need for such measures even if they had caused disruption in his life. He appreciated the care taken to protect him and others like him. The responsibility of his past was not something he took lightly, and knowing the FBI valued that was reassuring. Agent Collins then shared more about the potential security breaches. There had been a data leak involving Cold War operations, raising concerns about sensitive information. This leak had placed individuals like John under closer watch. The FBI wanted to ensure nothing compromised national security. John thought about the importance of his service and the sacrifices made by him and his fellow soldiers. The missions had been difficult and the secrecy required had been a heavy burden. Yet, they had all understood the necessity of their work. Now, decades later, that work still held significance. Agent Collins asked if John had noticed anything unusual or if he had been contacted by anyone from his past. John had not. His life in Millfield was quiet and uneventful. He assured her that he would report anything suspicious, understanding the importance of vigilance. As they talked, John felt a sense of connection to his past. The conversation reminded him of the principles he had lived by during his service: duty, honor, and responsibility. These values had guided him then and continued to do so now. Agent Collins thanked John for his cooperation and understanding. She expressed gratitude for his service and reassured him that the FBI's actions were in his best interest. John appreciated her professionalism and the respect she showed for his past. Before leaving, Agent Collins provided John with her contact information. She encouraged him to reach out if he had questions or needed assistance. John felt reassured knowing he had someone to turn to if needed. Returning home, John shared the details of the meeting with Mary. She listened carefully, understanding the gravity of the situation. Though the past few days had been challenging, their bond remained strong. They supported each other, knowing they would face whatever came next together. The couple settled back into their daily routine, grateful for the peace of their home and the support of their community. The experience had reminded them of the value of their quiet life in Millfield, surrounded by friends and neighbors who cared for them. As the days passed, John reflected on the events and the renewed connection to his past. He realized that his service, though long ago, was still relevant. It was a part of who he was, shaping his values and actions. The responsibility he felt was a testament to the importance of those missions. The community, aware of the FBI's involvement, remained supportive. Neighbors checked in on John and Mary, offering help and companionship. The couple felt grateful for the kindness shown by those around them, reinforcing their sense of belonging in Millfield. John continued to reflect on his past, finding comfort in the knowledge that his service was valued. The experience had reignited a sense of purpose, reminding him of the impact of his choices. He felt a renewed commitment to living by the principles that had guided him through his military career. As the sun set over Millfield, John and Mary sat together on their porch, enjoying the quiet evening. The world outside continued to move, but for them, the peace of their home was a sanctuary. John held Mary's hand, finding comfort in her presence and the life they shared. The echoes of his past were still present, but they no longer felt burdensome. Instead, they were reminders of a life well lived and a duty fulfilled. John knew that the promises he had made were kept and the legacy of his service was secure. With Mary by his side, he found contentment in the simple joys of their life together. John and Mary were now back into their routine in Millfield. The events of the past days had been unusual, but the support from their community made it easier. They appreciated the familiar rhythm of their life and the warmth of their neighbors. One afternoon, John received a call from Agent Sarah Collins. She wanted to meet with him one more time. John agreed, understanding the importance of these discussions. They arranged to meet at a nearby federal building to ensure privacy. At the federal building, Agent Collins greeted John with a friendly nod. She thanked him for coming and led him to a meeting room. The room was simple, with a table and 2 chairs. John sat down, ready to hear what Agent Collins had to say. Agent Collins began by updating John on the situation. The FBI had been able to secure the sensitive information related to the Cold War operations. The potential threat had been neutralized thanks to the vigilance of people like John. She assured him that there was no longer any immediate risk. John felt a sense of relief. The knowledge that the situation was under control eased his mind. He had been concerned about the implications of the data leak and the possible consequences. Knowing that the matter was resolved allowed him to focus on the present. Agent Collins expressed gratitude for John's cooperation and understanding throughout the process. She emphasized that his past service was deeply valued by the agency. John appreciated her words, feeling a renewed sense of pride in his contributions. The conversation shifted to the future. Agent Collins explained that while the immediate threat was resolved, the FBI would continue to monitor for any signs of risk. They would keep John informed if any new developments arose. She assured him that his safety and the security of the information he had protected were priorities. John understood the need for continued vigilance. He was grateful for the FBI's dedication to safeguarding the legacy of his service. The experience had reminded him of the enduring impact of his past and the importance of maintaining security. Agent Collins also mentioned that the agency wanted to ensure John and Mary's well-being. They understood the stress caused by the recent events and wanted to provide support. John appreciated the offer, though he felt reassured by the resolution of the issue. Before concluding the meeting, Agent Collins handed John a letter. It was from the director of the FBI, thanking him for his service and cooperation. The letter acknowledged the importance of his role in protecting national security. John was touched by the gesture, feeling a deep sense of respect from the agency. As John left the federal building, he felt a sense of closure. The events of the past days had been challenging, but they had also reinforced his commitment to the principles he valued. He was grateful for the opportunity to contribute to something greater than himself. Returning home, John shared the details of the meeting with Mary. She listened with interest, relieved to hear that the situation was under control. Together, they reflected on the experience, feeling grateful for the support of the FBI and their community. The couple resumed their routine in Millfield, appreciating the simple joys of their life. They spent time with friends, volunteered in the community, and enjoyed the peace of their home. The events had strengthened their bond, reminding them of the importance of facing challenges together. John continued to reflect on his past, finding comfort in the knowledge that his service was valued. The experience had deepened his appreciation for the present and the life he shared with Mary. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the legacy of his service was secure. The community remained supportive, offering kindness and companionship. Neighbors often stopped by to chat or share a meal. John and Mary felt blessed to be part of such a caring community. The connection with their neighbors brought joy and comfort to their lives. As the days passed, John found peace in the routine of his daily life. He enjoyed tending to his garden, reading, and spending time with Mary. The simplicity of their life in Millfield was a source of happiness and contentment. John often thought about the events that had brought them to this point. The misunderstanding at the grocery store, the involvement of the FBI, and the renewed connection to his past had all been unexpected. Yet, these events had also reminded him of the importance of service and the impact of his choices. One evening, as the sun set over Millfield, John and Mary sat on their porch, enjoying the quiet of the night. The world outside continued to move, but for them, the peace of their home was a sanctuary. John held Mary's hand, feeling grateful for the life they shared. The echoes of his past were still present, but they no longer felt burdensome. Instead, they were reminders of a life well lived and a duty fulfilled. John knew that the promises he had made were kept and the legacy of his service was secure. With Mary by his side, he found contentment in the simple joys of their life together. As the stars appeared in the sky, John reflected on the journey he had taken. The challenges and the triumphs, the sacrifices and the rewards all had shaped him into the person he was. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the experiences that had defined his life. With a renewed sense of peace, John looked forward to the future. He knew that whatever came next, he would face it with the same dedication and integrity that had guided him throughout his life. The story of his past was secure, and the promise of tomorrow was bright.